Hello everyone, and I hope you're all doing very well. So we're in DCS World and we're looking at the brand new SAM that we have available, and I'm very proud to say that it's British. It is the Rapier system. We've got in here the FSA, so that basically means the version A unit. And with a distinct and embarrassing lack of British hardware in DCS at the moment, we've got the Rapier SAM system here. We've got a couple of World War II units, one of which I've got there. We've got a Spitfire aircraft, and that's about it for such a great military nation. But we've now got the Rapier, which is great. So, during the 40s, during World War II, we had to defend our land with guys like this. This is the Bofors 40mm anti-aircraft unguided weapon. As the war ended and the era of the jet plane came in, then we had to upgrade to the Soviet threat. And the doctrine at the time for the Soviets, or for any of the super nations, was to fly high-level bombers and drop nuclear weaponry. So the British responded with the mighty Bloodhound missile, a high-altitude, long-range surface-to-air missile, along with its sister missile, the Thunderbird, and maybe we'll get that in DCS one day. That'll be really cool. It's a really smart looking weapon and quite ahead of its time, really. And that was mainly operated in the 50s and the 60s, but during the 60s and into the late 60s, of course, historically the Cold War doctrine changed from high-level bombing to low-level bombing, simply because the SAMs just outpaced the aircraft of the time. So high-level just became the area of the SAMs. And we all know about the shoot down of Gary Powers and whatnot. So then we had bombers on all sides that were designed to attack fast and low level. TRS-2, British. Tornado, British. B-1B, American, and so on. So the British responded with the Rapier system. It was conceived in the mid to late 60s and became operational and built in the early 70s. And it was designed as a mobile. That was critical because the Bloodhound and the Thunderbird weren't mobile per se. As a mobile field SAM unit, low altitude, low range. We've got three units here. We've got the launcher unit here. We've got the optical tracker here. And we've got the blind fire radar here. But it started out as just these two here. This was added later on. So we've got the optical tracker here. This is what guides the missile. Even with the radar track version later on, this is what guides the missile. And essentially you can say it's a glorified TV camera. It uses a visual electro-optical contrast track on a target and guides the missile to the target that way. And the way that it works is really interesting. So if I try and pan around here, we've got flares on the back of these missiles here. When these missiles fire, the optical tracker here sees the missile. It sees 2 or 4 flares. I can't remember how many on each missile. It sees either 2 or 4 flares on the back of the missile, so it tracks that in optical contrast, and it can track the target aircraft here in optical contrast, and it guides the missile with those flares onto the target. It reminds me a bit of the RB-05A in the Vigan, how you can you look at the flares on the back of the missile and guide it in that way. And that's the way that it all works. And the original incarnation, so just when we had these two units, would be to have a guy sitting in the Land Rovers, and we'll go through that in a bit, with a joystick and a TV screen, and he would be seeing the optical input from this camera here, and he would have to keep a crosshair on the target aircraft, a bit like a video game. He'd have a little joystick and he'd keep the crosshair of this here onto the target aeroplane, and then this missile will guide automatically via a computer to the target as said. That type of system, as we know in DCS and the world, is called SACLOS, Semi-Automatic Control Line of Sight, and it works exactly how I've said it. You've got an optical tracker here and it guides the missile via a flare or the burner on the back of the missile to the target that way. And there are several advantages and disadvantages of SACLOS. First of all, you don't need a radar lock. A radar lock gives the location of this guy away if we have to have a radar lock. And it tells the guy that we're shooting at that we're locking him and that we're firing at him. So with the SACLOS system, we don't need to give that away, and we can fire at him even with the radar turned off in some cases, the search radar. Another benefit is that we can be much more accurate with a SACLOS missile than with a radar guided missile. And because we can be much more accurate, we can guide the missile like right into the missile. So a radar guided missile, I'm going to pick this guy here. This is a S300 SA-10 PS system, whopping great system. It guides its missile via radar homing onto a target. Now it can't be accurate enough to actually hit that missile onto the plane. It can only get accurate to within a few tens of feet. And then this guy here will have a proximity fuse that will go off when it's near to the plane. And because of that, you have to have a thumping great warhead to do enough damage. And there, if you're going to have a thumping great warhead, you have to have a thumping great missile. With the SACLOS, we don't even need a proximity fuse. We can actually hit the hostile aircraft with our missile, physically hit it. So we need a tiny little warhead. And in these Rapiers, we've got a tiny little 1.4 kilo warhead. I don't know what warhead is on that there, but it's going to be markedly larger than this. Small warhead means we can have a small missile. Look at the size of this missile. It's smaller than a man. It only weighs 45 kilos. So even me, with my decrepit body, I could pick one of these missiles up and fling it around. So that's the whole doctrine behind a SACLOS system here. And to go into a bit more detail about it, the actual guidance coming from this guy here, the optical tracker, is a radio link. So these are radio controlled, a bit like a radio controlled car. And this guy here is constantly giving left, right, up, down data via radio link to these missiles. And the fins on the back actuate to guide. So we have a basic crush fuse at the front. We hit the missile, we hit the plane, and then the small warhead goes off and pretty much explodes inside the plane and will take it down. And hence, if you've ever wondered why in DCS, why sometimes small missiles can be the most devastating, well, that's why. It's all about the accuracy of the missile and how the warhead explodes. So let's look a bit more at the unit here. So we've got the launcher here. It carries 4 missiles total, 2 on either side. Inside the dome here, we've got the search radar for the Rapier. Remember, we didn't have this guy to begin with, so we've got a search radar in here. We've also got, I can't remember if it's above or below, but we have a IFF antenna here that's for IFF. And the radio link from this guy here to the actual missiles is this antenna here. This is our radio transmitter antenna that can actually send the command to the missile. So this guy will swivel round on its base. And this here is a petrol generator that can power this guy, possibly this guy, I'm not entirely sure. And the whole of the package would be towed. It would be completely movable, and it would be towed by 2 Land Rovers. Now I know these aren't Land Rovers, but they're roughly about the same size, I guess, a little bit bigger. So you'd have 2 Land Rovers towing the launcher, the generator, and the optical tracker. So at this point we can go and look at the Russian equivalent. The Russian equivalent is the SA-19 Tunguska, and it's an absolute beast. Now, have no bones about it, the best SAMs ever made in the world, pretty much any time. That's not technically true, but you know, generally it's true, including today, 2019, are the Soviets and then the Russians. They have a defense doctrine, a doctrine based on defense for their military, and hence they've always made the best SAMs and probably always will do. And so their equivalent of the Rapier system is Tunguska, and it's, in performance terms, is pretty much the same as far as I understand. If we ignore the guns on the Tunguska, because it has guns as well, and they put it into a tank type track format, so it's like this but even quicker and can get to places even more difficult to get to, and can set up even faster. I'm not going to go into the Tunguska anymore because I've done videos about it and you guys know all about it anyway. Just talking about the Rapier. So in the early 70s, after the first sales, to complete sales contracts to Iran, I believe it was, they had to add on a third part of the Rapier system, and this is a track radar. So this chap here. The problem with the system so far is you've literally got a man sitting in a Land Rover with a joystick, like a video game, pointing a crosshair at the plane. Well, what if it's cloudy? Then it wouldn't work. So we needed a backup system to be able to track hostile aircraft in case of no line of sight, in case of mist, fog, cloud, whatever. And so we had the blind fire, Marconi blind fire radar added on, along with a separate petrol generator here. We also had to add another Land Rover to make it a trio in this case. So this is a rotational radar here. Now I don't fully understand if it's search radar as well or if it's purely track. It's probably purely track because we've got the search radar already here in the launcher unit. So what will happen is my aircraft, in a minute I'll come flying along here, the search radar here will pick me up, transmit information to the track radar here, the track radar will turn around, get a lock on me and track me. And that will keep me in a very narrow beam of radiation and track me through any weather. But that does not make this a radar guided SAM like the S300. There is a marked difference here. This will track me and it will then feed information, not to the missile like a radar guided SAM, but it will feed track information through to the optical tracker, which will then communicate to the missile via the radio antenna here. So all this does here, the tracker, is guide the optical tracker. It's an add-on, if you like. And because of that, we're not going to get a launch warning in our aircraft because this is not in any way a radar guided missile. Another way we could explain that is that this optical tracker here is being slaved to this track add-on track radar here. So it's a very interesting way of doing it. In terms of performance, missile performance, it's pretty much the same as the Tunguska. It's a very similar doctrine system. Its range is going to be about 4 to 5 miles. Maximum altitude, depending on the variant, is going to be between 9,000 and 15,000 feet. I'm not 100% sure which sub-variant we have here. So it's relatively low and easy to evade in terms of going high. But of course, this is purely for low altitude intercept. Another thing I wanted to show is the difference between a SACLOS type system missile in terms of size and a radar guided. And we've got an S300 here, which is, I think we'd say it's a medium-sized missile. It's not even one of the big ones. If you go back to Nike Hercules or SA2, SA1, SA4, maybe even SA3, these are actually quite small. But look at the size of that great big 40-foot missile, 30-foot missile, compared to SACLOS Rapier, SACLOS Tunguska. And the reasons for that, as we spoke about before, because they need a bigger burn time and they need a much bigger warhead for that inaccuracy. And now to the major disadvantage of SACLOS. Now I can't tell you that it's like this in real life because I don't know, but in DCS, SACLOS missiles can be easy to evade as long as you see them launch. Now the problem with seeing them launch is that these are smokeless missiles and that makes them very hard to see. When we're evading a SAM, it's critical to know when the SAM's been fired. And if we can't see them, then we're pretty much screwed. So the trick is to be flying towards these guys. We have to pretty much know that they're here, otherwise we've got no chance at all. Because like I said, we won't get any radar warning that they've been fired. So we have to see the small flash of them firing, and then we can evade. Now to evade a SACLOS missile, once you know it's been fired, is actually easier than evading a radar guided missile and sometimes an IR missile, because the optical tracker here and the optical tracker in here has to keep a crosshair on our aircraft. That's quite difficult to do if the aircraft is suddenly moving, jinking left, jinking right. I know neither of these systems use the manual method of a man with a joystick anymore. You know, it's kind of semi-automated. But even so, this contrast optical tracker here is going to struggle to follow my really exact movements and if I do a really tight turn, and therefore that's how you can beat a SACLOS type missile, again assuming that you've seen it. And in those terms, this SACLOS here and this SACLOS here are pretty much the same. They're pretty much roughly about the both, but equally difficult to beat. Okay, I've spieled on for a while. I've told you all my knowledge about the Rapier. Apologies if anything's wrong there, you know, it's just what I've picked up over the years. Obviously anything British I know much more about than anything kind of, you know, Russia, Soviet or American. So next we're going to go poo-poo and fly into it. I've deactivated the SA-19. So the first thing we get is a warning on our RWR down here, which is the Rapier track. Actually, it's not the track, that's the search radar. That's the search radar. It will track us at some point, and you'll hear it when it's tracking us. That will be the track radar, the third unit. Okay, we're 10 miles from the unit. In terms of its the Rapier's search radius, it's about 15 miles, about 20-ish kilometers, 23 kilometers, something around there I found. The track is about 8 miles or something like that, and in perfect conditions, the range of the missile is about 5 miles, something like that. Now luckily I'll know where this missile is because I placed the unit most of the time you won't know where that unit is, and so you won't have the benefit of seeing that missile launch. And that's what makes these guys so deadly. Right, 6 miles, so I've got to get ready now. So as soon as he shoots, I'm going to go full power and I'm going to evade. In fact, timing is critical. What I like to do is not evade as soon as it fires. I like to wait until it's halfway through its burn time, that missile, and then make the jink. If I evade too soon, it can actually pick me up again. The SAC class guidance can pick me up again as I've evaded, at which point my energy is low and that missile can actually hunt me down. So timing's going to be critical, and I'm going to try and do it in a bit of a funny way to make it visually nice, and I may actually fail, but we'll see how we go. 4 miles away. That's the track, so the track radar's now found me, and what we can see here is that this guy, oh look, he's just in the middle of turning around, look. Brrrr. Pretty cool, huh? In fact, why don't we just kind of... Oh, I was going to watch it from here and see it fire. What we're going to see from here, you just got to be good at seeing shit. There's maybe 1 pixel out of place. I don't know if you can see it. And that is going to tell me that that missile's fired. So you've got to have a freaking eagle eye to do this. Can you see that? Can you see that? It may be lost in the MP compression, but there is 1 pixel there that's a missile, and there is ever so slightly tiny trail, even though it's smokeless. You know, you can just see distortion of the heat and whatnot, okay? So I'm going to go burn, and I'm going to full turn, and I'm going to try and do this from the missile views. This might go a little bit funky. And I'm going to try and show you how it tries to keep up the guidance, and it's just going to not quite give track. So unpause, burner on, and... Damn it! Didn't work very well. What we'll do is we'll try again from the cockpit.
Engine fire.
And they're small missiles. They've got big fins. They're very lightweight, 45 kilos, and they're even lighter once the fuel is burnt off, and they're extremely maneuverable. So we're going to try again, yo. Alright, I'm going to try a bit more of a sensible dodge. I should be a bit faster, really, as well. 450 to 500 is pretty much optimum. Launch. A little bit early, actually. Sugar. Come on, wake up, man. Wake up. 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 I'm back. I'm back. Woo! Let's try that again. That was a little bit early, a little bit unrealistically early, to be honest. So let's try that again. Try and have a bit more of a realistic reaction time. If you notice, I always go to the left when I dodge SAMs because I'm left-handed. It's just that's the way I turn. And that's actually bad in some of the warbirds, because some warbirds are clockwise propeller and some are anti-clockwise. I'm starting to learn this. So if you're ever going to dodge in a warbird, you have to learn which way the screw goes. Okay, here we go. So this shows how good a pilot's eyes have to be. It's one of the many reasons why I can never be a pilot. Come on, fire, 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 fire. It's not going to fire, it's not going to fire. There it is. That's the missile. And jink! And jink! No! Yes! And you see how close it went to me there? If that was a proximity fuse, you see, that would have nailed me there. But you see, it's just the right amount of jink at the right time will just upset the guidance. It just, that crosshair can't stay on me, and everything takes time. The radio transmission doesn't really take any time, but these actuated fins have to turn. It takes milliseconds, and so that's how you can dodge them. Now I couldn't do that with an S300, and the reason is I could miss the physical missile in the S300, but the proximity fuse will go off, and that massive 20, 30, 40, 50 kilo warhead would just blast anything, vaporize anything within 100 feet. So that's the reason, and I'm learning this in DCS at the moment, this is the reason you can dodge SAC-class missiles like that, but you won't be able to dodge a high warhead proximity fuse warhead. Now I'm learning some more about SAMs. I'd love to go through some more of the SAMs in a bit more detail, maybe with some help from you guys. We've got some experts out there who know a lot more than me. I think, let me know if you're going to be interested in that. Let me know your thoughts on that, any corrections, and I'll see you later. Let's see if I'm still alive. Woohoo! Super Cup win!